Good morning, 5th grade. Today we're going to continue reading in our text, The Birch Bark House. Before we get started, we have a quick write. It says, how are Amachius's and Esperanza's responses to challenge similar? How are their responses different? Explain your reasoning. And so you can think about the different challenges that Amachius has faced. You can think about how she's had to move to a different house, how she moved away from her friends during the summer. You could think about the different chores that she has to do. You could also think about, her relationship with her grandmother. So silently write your answer to the quick write. Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready for the focus question. The focus question for today is, what challenges do the characters face? How do the characters respond to challenge? Our vocabulary words are gratitude, and that is when you are thankful or you are ready to show your appreciation. And so you draw a line to this picture that says thank you. Doubt, it's a feeling of uncertainty. And so this die is an example of doubt. The person has to roll the dice because they're not sure about what to do. And the last one is insecure. It's when it describes a person who doubts themselves, who's unsure of themselves. So this girl is insecure. She's covering up her face with her shirt. Go ahead and turn the page to 121. It's now winter, and we are going to begin reading in our text, Chapter 9, and we're going to be using our CSPS strategy as we read. Page 121. Snow filled the world, falling deeper and deeper, changing the island. The cabin was made in the Chimukuman way. Day was proud of its snug construction, with thick logs fitted together as closely as possible. The heaviest mud he could find, the stickiest clay, Day tamped between the logs to seal the cracks. He put cross beams up top and split logs to make the tiny loft where Amachius, Angeline, and Pinch slept in their woven reed mats placed over tufts of moss. We'll stop right there because we have information about the setting. In box 2, you would write, it is a snowy winter, and Amachius and her family are living in the cabin where it is warm. Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready for the quote. And you would write down this quote on page 121. Snow filled the world, falling deeper and deeper, changing the island. The cabin was made in the Chimukuman way. Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready to keep reading. And as we're reading, we're focusing on Amachius and her life in the cabin, what she's doing. Grandma still slept at the coolest end of the loft, only now in her thick rabbit fur blanket. Cold crept along the floor. Amachius was glad of the boring time she'd spent over the summer pressing fistfuls of gumbo clay, taken from the center of the island into those places in the house where on the sides she had mended best. Cold air sneaked in just where she'd run out of muck and had to use grass. Sometimes the wind whistled when it entered. That thin whine sent a shiver down her back. Now that Day was home, the cabin changed too. Filled with his traps and blankets, his big man's coat and head wrap, his moose-hide mitts and traveling kettles, ice chisels, axe, his moccasins old again within Mama's embrace, and his new gun secure on pegs over the door. The cabin seemed smaller, cozier, in a way more interesting, Amachius thought, and more difficult too. People stopped in at any time of day or even in the deep of night, and these visitors require constant attention. Yellow Kettle and Grandma were known as the keepers of a good store of food, and a warm fire, although Amachius, Angeline, and Pitch were the ones responsible for hauling the water for tea or chopping the wood for the fire that burned in the proud little hearth. The fires needed constant vigilance, as did family needs. Day-Day's gun required his concentrated care, and he liked tea at his elbow while he cleaned the workings and barrel. It seemed to Amachius that every time the grown-ups began to talk, they discussed travel routes west. They argued whether the pressure of so many newcomers was going to send them the way so many others were sent, into the territory of the Waognug, the Dakota. There was now constant talk of government intentions, plans to meet in council, invitations to smoke the pipe. At least there were less serious visitors, including Two-Strike Girl, Wishnob, and Auntie Muskrat, Twilight, and Little Bee. Angeline's favorite friend, young Tin Snow, came by to visit almost every day. Albert Lepatre came early to tell his dreams to Day-Day, who tried to take them seriously. We'll stop right there because we have information about the characters. In box 1A, you would write, Amachius's cabin has a lot of guests, and her parents keep talking about whether or not they will have to move west because of the Chimukuman. Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready for the quote. And for the quote, you would write down this quote on page 123. It seemed to Amachius that every time the grown-ups began to talk, they discussed travel routes west. Press pause to write down your answer in box 1B and play when you're ready to keep reading. We're in the middle of page 123. Last night I dreamed my head got stuck in a kettle, he revealed, his voice low and troubled. It must have been a very big kettle, Day-Day said solemnly, for Lepatre had a big round head and a full moon face. Get, said Lepatre. He never understood teasing jokes. It was big. Even so, what does it mean? Some dreams are so powerful they are beyond our humble ability to comprehend, said Day-Day. Lepatre leaned back satisfied. Only Mama caught Day-Day's wink. All right, and on this page, she talks about how Old Tallow comes in with her big coat, which means that it is officially winter. And we're going to go to the next page, page 126. And Tin Snow made Fishtail this really beautiful beaded bag. And it shows off like how great Tin Snow is at sewing and how great she is at beadwork. All right, so we're in the middle of the page. Will you teach me how to bead that pattern? Angeline asked her friend. Yeah, Tin Snow removed her little sewing kit and needle, and Angeline took out her own work, her own beads bought with dried whitefish. They began. Gay neen, said Amachius. Me too. Tin Snow smiled gently, and Angeline looked at her little sister in surprise. You? She grinned. Little frog, little jumper, can you sit still that long? Stung by her sister's amused tone of voice, Amachius dropped her head to her chest, eyes squinting narrow. A huge space opened up in her head, black and rushing, as a freezing winter stream. She was old enough to tan the stinking old hides, wasn't she? Her work was valued there, wasn't it? Why shouldn't she be trusted to use the precious beads? She was 8 winters now. She wasn't that little. She could chop wood, haul the water from the hole Nokomis kept open in the ice with an axe and a long, sharp pole. Why couldn't she be like the older girls? Angeline laughed out loud. Amachius turned away. Her heart struck cold in her chest, tiny but heavy as a lake rock. How her sister's words could stab her sometimes. But now, as though she hadn't noticed Angeline's remarks at all, Tin Snow's hand was stroking Amachius's arm as she was speaking. Shh, Ishte, little sister, I made something for you. We'll stop right there because we have information about the problem. In box 3A, we would write, Omachius wants to sew like Angeline and tin snow, but Angeline makes fun of her. This makes Omachius upset. Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready for the quote. And we would write down this quote at the bottom of page 126. Stung by her sister's amused tone of voice, Omachius dropped her head to her chest, eyes squinting narrow. And then I put 3 little dots because I wanted to include one of her thoughts. Why couldn't she be like the older girls? Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready to keep reading. Into Omachius' hands she placed a small leather packet. Omachius looked up at Tin Snow, uncertain. Yes, for you. Tin Snow gestured for her to open it, and slowly, with unbelieving delight, Omachius did. The leather packet was lined with broad cloth, and into the cloth 2 needles were stuck. 2! Around a peeled twig, Tin Snow had wound a long length of the finest sinew thread to use in beading. At the end of the cloth, a small pocket held a lump of fragrant summery yellow beeswax to use for strengthening the sinew thread. The best of all, she saw, as Tin Snow lifted up the dark blue strip of cloth, there was a tiny sack of all colors of beads, seed beads, and the little grown-up kind of beads, shining and gleaming against the cloth. Manadom-in-Nes, they were called, little spirit beads. Megwetch, megwetch, megwetch. Omachius thanked Tin Snow over and over again until the older girl couldn't help smiling. The youngest of her family, Tin Snow, had no little sisters and, as yet, no children, so she was extra kind to Omachius. As the older girls returned to their work and their talk, Omachius curled near the fire to look at her beads and to imagine what she would make with them. At first she thought that she might bead some tiny moccasins for her dolls. Then she thought Angeline might make fun of her project. Mama, something for Mama? She had so many quilled things and preferred them. Besides, Grandma was always making a box or an ornament for her. How about for Grandma? For Day-Day? For Angeline? Certainly not for Pinch, who would spoil anything he got. Or Niwu, who might chew off the beads. Niwu. Suddenly she knew, as though the beads told her themselves, that they were meant for her little brother. Omachius would make something very special for him. She saw what she would make coming clear. Moccasins, warm moccasins, trimmed with rabbit fur. In her mind she planned them out, sewn from scraps of moose hide that were left over from the summer. She saw them with white flowers beaded on the ankles, woolen balls of blanket thread to decorate the cuffs. Admiring her idea, gloating, planning, Omachius turned the leather sewing kit and beaded packet over and over in her hands. We'll stop right there because we have the solution. In box 4A, you would write, Tin Snow gives Omachius sewing supplies. And Omachius plans to make a special pair of moccasins for Niwu. Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready for the quote. And for the quote, we would write, on page 129. In her mind, she planned them out, sewn from scraps of moose hide that were left over from the summer. Press pause to write down your answer and play when you're ready for the paragraph. The paragraph says, what challenge does Omachius face? What does her response reveal about her as a person? And so if we go to Omachius' problem, her sister makes fun of her because Omachius wants to do something that the older girls do. And her sister makes fun of her. And so she responds by accepting Tin Snow's gift, and she is planning out what she's going to sew to kind of prove everyone that she can do it.